Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Person Behind the Pen. I am so excited for this one. I have been tackling this book nonstop since I received it, and I have so many notes it isn't funny. What excites me about this is it's a little bit different than the type of books we generally feature. Now, it's not that we don't feature all books, we totally feature all books. Uh, but most of the books have been more around motivation and inspiration and such like this. This book I have been digging into. Um, wow. So talk about something that comes into your life at a moment that you need it. Anyway, I already dove right in, and the show is not even 2 minutes in. So let's start with saying hi to everyone. Linda, thank you so much for being here. Ariel, it's really nice to see you as well. Meryl, my buddy over in Jersey, how goes it? Did you have some snow out there? I think you said you did, right? The night before? So I'm over the snow in New York. It needs to stop. I mean, it needs to stop like yesterday. I can't take it anymore. Jason Forhan, I am going to pause here for a second. Jason Forhan is the founder of HR4U, a nonprofit that founded another project called Transformation Kitchen. Guiding Brilliant Writers Publishing House, me, so excited to be a part of the inaugural charitable transformation cookbook launching next month. I have been helping to put together all of these amazing recipes sent in by international chefs, as well as some of you out there in the audience, including Sharon Rose, who I just saw pop in here. So again, Sharon Rose did Italian mini meatloaves. Yes, I said that. I can't actually remember most of the recipes because I want to try them all. Anyways, next month, New York City is going to be the second annual Cooking Up Change fundraiser. I had the opportunity to meet Jason and so many LinkedIn friends there last year. I cannot wait to attend this year again. It is on March 28th. I am going to drop in the comments of the show how you can get a ticket. It's virtual and it's in person. And needless to say, come in person. I would love to say hello. All right, Bill, if you know him well enough, you get to call him Bill. This is Bill, and so great to have you joining us. All right, that's a bit about what's going on with Guiding Brilliant Writers. And I know, like, I right now it's like I'm on speed, like I drank 6 cups of coffee. I haven't, but then if I did, this totally would be the person that would get it, because one of the things that I absolutely love about him and that we so have in common is that coffee is life. Yay! Somebody gets it. It so is life. I'm all wound up here. All right. What else is going on in the wheelhouse of guiding brilliant writers publishing? Okay. What else is going on? We got an interesting book coming up. I want to say sometime in June. This one is going to be all about young adults. They range from 14 to 16 years in age, and this is more of an educational experience for young adults living day to day in high school. And again, it's like pushing the boundaries. It's always something new, some new genre for me. Like I don't even know where this genre is gonna go, but it's gonna fit in somewhere. So very excited for that one coming out. We're gonna have a second book coming out soon by Dr. Steve Hudgens, who we published last September, The Mosaic Family Systems Theory. And of course, volume 2 of We Choose to Be More Than Our Diagnoses. The co-author call is still open till the end of February. If you are interested in joining, please reach out and let's get that squared away. Ariel, who is actually in the comments, her son Jacob, young adult, born nonverbal, autistic, now attending high school, is not only verbal, but has his own podcast. He is going to be writing his story in We Choose to Be More Than Our Diagnoses. Incredibly excited. And the guest we have today will also be writing in We Choose to Be More Than Our Diagnoses. So I'm sure we'll chat just a little bit about that. But this is going to take over this conversation. We tell you right now. So make sure I say hi to Lisa Favik out there. Hey, Trini, I know you are having a blast. What are we, Carnival Tuesday in Trinidad right now? Oh my God. Have fun for me. Parade, parade, parade away. And there, Leslie Flowers. Want to make sure that we say hello, hello, hello. All right. I already need a sip of water. The show just started. I am going to introduce Joe professionally first. So I got to throw these on. Okay. I'm going to read right from the back of his book. Professionally, Joe is a multi-time founder, former corporate executive, and advisor who has built, scaled, and exited 3 companies across media, operations, and services. Through his advisory and nonprofit work supporting justice-impacted individuals, he helps people rebuild careers, businesses, and identifies after disruption, burnout, or collapse. So that's Joe professionally. He's definitely going to share some more. But let's talk about Joe personally. Personally, Joe is a lifelong partner, father, grandfather, and a fellow, um, I want to say, how do I want to say this? He was misdiagnosed uh, with his bipolar disorder. And way back when, I was as well. There's so much about a depression diagnosis. Let's just say depression, right? Overall. Um, and when we got to talking the other day, it was unreal to be able to speak to someone who could finish my sentences, who could put into words some of the things that I've felt. I believe that I'm fairly good at articulating. Still, those words escape me sometimes when people ask me to explain what it feels like, let's say, when you're on a high or when you're in a destructive low. I honestly, only somebody that's been there can really explain that and understand it, truthfully. So, and like I said, other than that, total coffee lover, and what's not to love about that? So I'm going to bring Joe on up right now. Everyone, please welcome to the stage, Joe Cullen. Hello, how are you?
Okay, you need to go away because I'm blushing a little bit right now. So
Oh,
it's feeling a little overwhelmed here.
no, no, no.
No,
But here, listen, it's the accolades are yours. You earned
yeah,
them. I mean, this is who you are professionally. And for those who joined earlier on, you might have seen the short video with Joe and his partner, his 4 beautiful daughters, his 3 precious grandkids. Just, they're so adorable. I am so jealous. Um, my son is 28, he'll be 29 this year. And the way things look, I don't think grandkids are my future. So, and considering that I adopted Nellie, she's also spayed, so that's not gonna happen either. I'm not gonna get furry grandbabies, so yeah, SOL here. But
well,
anyway,
it's fortunately mine all chose to graduate college before there were any families or little ones. So it's nice to meet you too, William, Jason. Hope you guys are doing great. But yeah, so the 3 cute little ones that you see in the picture, coffee is awesome. Um, and she was not lying about that. I literally live my life by coffee. Um, if you've followed my LinkedIn page at all, you'll know that my cherished coffee mug of the last several years finally had to be replaced, and I have been on a search for a new mug. Because the right mug is vital, and
oh yes.
so I started out, got this little smaller mug, but it was too small and too wide, so the coffee got cold too quick. Really cool looking though, but so it had to go away. Then it was Christmas time, so I have a special Christmas mug. It's a It's a Panther, Carolina Panthers coffee mug. All my coffee mugs are that I use. But it's a Christmas stocking. It's all kind of funny shaped. It's got the logo on it. That's my December mug. And then now I'm into a new ceramic mug, but it's probably gonna be replaced here in the next week or so. It's just not working out either, So it takes a little while. It's dating for me. It's so
Love it. I love the sense of humor. Listen, I could care less that the conversation is starting this way, guys, because this is funny. This is real life. These are the kind of things that go on in our everyday lives behind our doors that there's no reason to talk about it, so we kind of just don't. But I am so with you. So this is my guiding brilliant writer's mug.
Aha.
It's in white and it's in black, right?
Yeah.
The white's a little bit hard to see what's written on it, except when it's in front of you. But the point is, I was drinking out of it so much that I chipped it.
Here's my retired mug that had to go away. And so
I chipped it because I kept like every day I was drinking out of it. So my husband glued it, and it's now my pen. I mean, you probably can't see I have all these colored pens in here. So I like colored pens. I have issues. And I have a black one too. And that one literally not even chipped. Like I really like broke the handle off that one. People, it's not that it isn't good quality. It's just that I'm
use it.
klutzy.
Yeah, you use it.
Slightly
Stuff, it eventually wears out. So it happens. Look at me. I'm pretty much worn out. I've been
listen.
But no. So let's go back to the show. Now that we're off on our first coffee tangent of the night. I can't.
All right, we're gonna start with this. You gotta send me your address so I can send you a guiding brilliant writer's coffee mug. So we'll start there. But
right.
Guys, let's dive into this book a little bit here. I do want to ask Joe, where you're tuning in from. Tell us a bit about who you are. And why did you write this book? Like, give us in a snapshot because I'm going to be digging into this book tonight.
All right. So, the cover story, in the book is the lifelong lessons and stuff, and that is true. But really, the book's genesis is the last 10 years. Those that do know me, I kind of go back. I grew up in Missouri, school in Arkansas, have been in Mooresville, North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte now since 2001. And this is home. I've been here longer than I have been anywhere else in my life. So this has kind of become home. I basically, you touched on it in the open about going through my executive career and even my largest business being completely undiagnosed, not knowing what was going on, not understanding, the lows. The highs I didn't, I was happy about. Those were great. Anybody that that hasn't been destroyed by somebody with bipolar will see the highs and understand what that means. And for somebody that's already a creative, that's already got an kind of a extroverted personality, bipolar disorder can destroy in a hurry. And but I was able to capitalize on the highs to start some pretty good businesses. A lot of people will start businesses kind of willy-nilly if that's kind of their leaning. And I started 3 different companies that I sold for decent, we'll just say decent profit. And it was great. And then I got here, and but going in and out, I actually got fired from a couple of jobs early on due to the lows. And when you bottom out in it with a bipolar down, unless people really close to you are paying attention, most people never see the full bottom.
Yeah.
They don't understand where you go
And they don't see coming.
and how dark it gets. And when I was 26, yeah, I went I went through my worst depression phase, you know, through that extended period. My first episodes were in high school, but when I was 26,
Yeah.
had my oldest daughter was little. I, had bought my first house, had my first real job, all that fun stuff, and I hit the bottom, and for months could not work, could not eat, could not anything, but I still had to pretend that I was for everybody else's sake. And so take all of that, and I'm going to kind of try to speed up and move into losing my biggest business in
So
2000.
before
What's
we
that?
speed up and get into the business part of it,
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
yeah,
That's
no, that's okay because we are speaking about this book, Built for Rebuilding.
yeah,
However, this backstory is very important.
it is.
This is not just I got fired from 3 jobs in a row.
Yeah.
This is built $3 billion empires and bye bye, like poof.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
like
that's what happened. I literally got to um, when I started Race City Management in 2003. We were a sports, entertainment, and marketing company. We produced high school and college football and basketball games, coaches shows, highlight shows. We had games that aired everywhere from little local cable companies to uh, Masson, Sports South, broadcast stations in Atlanta, Charlotte, Columbia, uh, Raleigh, and a few other markets. And we were doing well. That company skyrocketed in a hurry.
mhm.
And then, unfortunately, the 2008 financial crisis happened, and um, literally thought we were going to weather the storm. Going into '09, I had plenty of contracts, thought things were going to be good. We started uh, receiving faxes and emails on the 2nd of January, and by the 15th, I had one contract remaining and had a 8-figure business become a 5-figure business in 15 days.
So that's
Like,
external.
so, was that?
That's external. That was an external.
That was a loud thud. We'll talk about the book a little too as we go. There really, you have internal collapses or you have an external collapses. The internal collapses are the ones people don't see. They're the ones that are uh, could be called a crisis of conscience or a self doubt or things of that nature. Those are the collapses that are all you. But then you have collapses that are a divorce, bankruptcy, something bigger, something louder. And then you have the explodes, and it's not just a few people; it explodes the whole world in your vicinity, and that's what that collapse was. So,
Mhm.
that set off a chain of events that um, I kind of again forced my way back. Thought I'm gonna, I can fix this. I can drive through it. I can do the things that I need to do, and I didn't fix anything, but I did what most people do. And then fast forward a few more years, and I got into major legal trouble, and that's another loud, thunderous crash that,
Yeah.
while
Same.
it didn't impact, several hundred families like the business collapse did, it did impact my family, and sent me into the justice system. We'll use that word because that's what we all call it. Um, you know, injustice may be just as equal as justice system, but because of that, and through that experience and what happened there, sitting and talking with my best friend after all the consequences had fallen out and everything was there, and now I'm a felon and I'm all that stuff is there. We're talking about what's going on, and I told him, I said, Tim, I had just planned to keep my head down for a while and just get a job, because I hadn't had a job since 2001. And, I had applied for 14 jobs, had gotten 11 interviews, and 7 job offers.
That's crazy. Like, I mean, when you think comparatively to what's going on in this market, I mean, that was back then, of course.
That was 10 years
But
ago.
even then, in a market that, it's an employee market,
Yeah.
and that just goes to show the kind of experience that you were carrying behind you.
Well, and that's just it. With those seven offers, as soon as they found out about my background, they were all rescinded if I even heard from a weekend.
Shit.
And I, talking with Tim, said, I'm very fortunate. I had the experience, as you just talked about. I had the background, I had the resume, and I had, I wasn't applying for crazy, high end, high caliber, but I was still, there were management and direct, kind of jobs, but they were still decent, and something I would have been proud to have and proud to go to work. So I had the resume, had the experience, I had a great network. That helped with some of it too, is that I did have the ability back then to go to a LinkedIn network that was about 3 times the size it is now. And, I had that. And then, I had the 2 other things that most people will either ignore or downplay. And that is the pigment of my skin and the fact that I have a deep voice in an Adam's apple.
Okay, so I get the pigment of the skin part. I didn't quite get the deep voice in Adam's apple.
Well,
but
most men have pronounced Adam's apples. Most ladies do not have a pronounced Adam's apple.
Okay.
And usually deeper voice, more masculine than not. So I was a man.
What, it's more authoritative? It's more
it's
commanding?
Just, that's a stereotype. I'm sorry, Nick. I put a stereotype in there.
No. Listen, I'm totally having this conversation because I do understand what you're saying. And because, like, put it this way, and we're going all over the place here. Yeah. I'm half Asian. People say that I'm the yellow race. Yeah. So, in other words, I'm invisible. Not really. Depending on where I am, I'm either too white or too brown.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. But so I do understand what you're saying. But
so I had all of this privilege and this ability, and I couldn't get a job managing a cookout restaurant. And
I'm just curious, do you think for 1 minute, I mean, and I know you said as soon as they found out about the felony, they dropped you, but something else that just popped into my mind. Sometimes when you have a job and they say that you apply for a job that you are way overqualified for, I mean, did you actually say in there that you ran an 8-figure company?
Actually, every one of them, I think we talked about that because they would ask, why do you want this job? And that's when, and I would tell them, I'm like, I'm looking for something to kind of get back into the marketplace. I've been, away for a few years and, just trying to re-enter. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'd tell them about the business and about how it collapsed and that I'd kind of just have had a a few years of trying to put my feet back under me, and they would understand that. And then they'd be like, well, if you're up for this, they'd offer me the job on the spot.
Makes sense because you were running a very successful business and it did not fall apart because of, into and out.
Mismanagement or any of
Yeah.
those things. But, so with all of that said, talking with Tim, I said, what I would really like to do is I would like to figure out a way to help train and educate um, people that are facing the same problems, that had come out of prison, that had the felony tag. And that's where Cider was born, which is my nonprofit. And we started talking about that, and here we are 10 years later, roughly, finally making that happen. um, but that started the conversation. And then, you know over the years with my therapist, sitting and going through basically since birth, the trauma that I faced as a youth, and then bipolar and what the ups and downs there meant, and what selling companies, starting companies, being fired from jobs, and all the different levels of, we'll use the term rebuild now because that's kind of how it's been, you know, couched here in the book. But I started kind of in the back of my head saying, there's something here. And, I hadn't written a book at this point yet or anything, so I didn't have the idea of a book. So there wasn't that working at that particular time.
But you've
But
written several now.
yes, but and that's what happened. I had always wanted to write a book. I had the book in my head, had it almost sorted out in my head, and had tried to write it a couple different times, but it never worked because, one, I didn't understand what I was trying to do. And so I took a 5-day writing challenge, and simply to write a little ebook and to learn the process, learn how to lay out the book, learn how to divide your work. And um, I am connected with Jackie Merrill. I actually released the Built for Rebuilding book on her show
Yes.
on the
Yeah.
2nd. So,
And I believe that's how I came to know Joe as well. And I'm glad that you talked about this part because you talk about the nonprofit work you've done, and you talk about the justice system, but you also mention homelessness in there. So,
yes,
being that this book is built for rebuilding, um, I do want to ask about that part of your life, and how it is, you know, working in the space of those two factors in at all to
they
put
do. And,
this
and, and,
structuring.
and here's the thing. This is the part that I struggle to talk about still, is the fact that right after I was arrested, uh, I ended up living in my car for a while, and then ended up in a homeless shelter. And I have a hard time still talking about that fully. I have talked about it. It's not uncommon knowledge, but um, that is another level of work that I want to be able to attack. And you I I've seen a lot more homelessness work, um, and affordable housing work. I actually sat on the board of directors of Community Housing Development Corporation back, in 2005, 6. I was vice president of the board there, and um, I've participated in building 3 different habitat homes. So it's always been something that's important to me.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but when I went through everything the justice impacted work seemed to be uh, more more of a challenge societally. They're both challenges. You have anywhere from 600,000 to 700,000 people any given night sleeping on the street. Uh, that's probably a very low estimate. That number, a lot of experts will say, could even double, that number. So,
I believe you.
and
Absolutely.
then when you look at, justice impacted individuals, there are that many individuals released from prison every year. So, that isn't a rolling 600. That's 600 this year, 600 more, 600 more. So it's a challenge. And when you look at recidivism numbers and those things, while total overall prison population has come down thanks to uh, mostly sentencing revisions and drug reclassification, drug crime reclassification.
Right.
Uh, recidivism rates have not, and women's incarceration rates have quadrupled. So there's a lot of pretty numbers that when you dig underneath of them don't make as much sense. So
Mm-hmm.
but all of that wrapped together, now that we've brought everything down, is where the Built for Rebuilding ended up coming from. After writing the books and learning how to do that, I wrote the business blueprint a couple of years ago, and I was really proud. That was my first book that I'm like, yeah, here, I'll show this to people, kind of thing,
Right.
and as I was writing that, some of the pieces of Built for Rebuilding started kind of popping up. And I started um, outlining this book about 18, 19 months ago, is when I started kind of drawing the conceptual outline of this is kind of what I want to cover. This is what I want it to achieve. And here's kind of what I see it being, and so I started that process, and then I started, just going through the steps of writing a book. And
Is the book now published where you feel that you wanted it to be, given that the pieces started coming up then? Because as we're running 45 minutes, I want to dive into the book.
okay, I tell you what, the book is, I would say, was about 90% of what I wanted it to be. There's
Okay,
still
good.
more. So,
So guys, now that Joe has shared a lot of the backstory, right? You understand the highs and the lows. You understand that when, on such a high, you could have a back crazy idea and you're like, you know what, I'm going for it because you're just on that high. Now, I'm sure you out there in the audience have also had those situations where you're like euphoric and you decide you're going to, go out and spend, I don't know, $1,000 buying something. Very, very different than to decide to go and throw all your investment into starting a business. But he rode that high for a while and with several businesses until they collapsed. So I do want to jump into the book because for me, I started doing some reading on here and I'm like, wait a minute. So one of the things that I loved in the book, and I want you guys in the audience to listen, think about this, and drop in the comments 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like I really want you to think about this because so many of you out there are entrepreneurs like me. You're small business owners. Some of you have been in your companies for 30 years. You could certainly speak about it from there, right? The 4 types of rebuilders, right? Now, I say this not as somebody that's necessarily rebuilding because you're going, oh, what is Nick talking about? She's not rebuilding. This is her new company. Well, you got to stop and listen to this and you will understand. Okay. So the first rebuilder is the rebuilder after destruction. The second is the midlife rebuilder. The third is the entrepreneur at zero. And the fourth is the justice impacted builder. So I'm going to ask you for each of those, Joe, to just give like 1 or 2 line explanation so the audience can better understand, what I'm talking about, because the rebuilder after destruction to me is like the absolute madness that happened to you.
It's a big part of it. The rebuilder after destruction. I kind of touched on it earlier. It's could be somebody that's lost a business, but it's also somebody that lost a job, got divorced, went bankrupt. Anything that basically, you didn't see coming, didn't have any idea. Somebody pulled the pin on the grenade and threw it in your life, and boom, it blew up. And now you're kind of shell
Exactly.
shocked. You've been beaten down. The
Exactly.
midlife person is more, you've been in, you just said 30 years in your company. You've been giving it your all day in and day out. And one day you wake up and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Do I still want to do this? Does this still fit me? Am I still this person? Does this job fit the person I've become? So that person, is a whole different, animal. Still the same story though. And then the entrepreneur at zero, while they're not technically rebuilding, like you said, Nick, you're starting a new company right now. But for a
Mhm.
lot of people, that entrepreneur starting at zero, they're not rebuilding. They don't want to ever have to rebuild. So, for them, doing it, the right way to begin with gives them the single greatest opportunity of not actually having to rebuild. And then, of course, the justice impacted rebuilder builder, uh, that person, they're trying to, battle so much stigma, so much, just pushback from society, from the people around them. They can't get a house, they can't get a job, they can't, they've got to still pay their parole fees though, and they, and so they've been given, for the most part, not everybody. There are states now that help people coming out of prison, but not many.
Mhm.
But they've got to navigate a new world. Literally, you know, door opens, they step out, they're expected to be a productive member of society.
Exactly. And that new world is happening right now, even just socially and economically here in the United States. We will not go into that further. However, Mary Kay is sharing on here, and this is what I enjoyed about what I read here. She said, I've lived enough years to have built through one, two, and three. Um, and that struck me, and why I asked the audience, because where do you fall? Do you feel you fall into one of these four types of rebuilders? Or are you in between, or have you been one, then a different one, and back to the original one? Because the thing is, it can happen. So when I think of the rebuilder after destruction, that's not been me, nor the midlife, well, builder, kind of, right? Because I did feel like, well, what I was doing, was it filling the part of my cup that I wanted to fill, um, spiritually, giving back, impact, and stuff like that. But and then I think about the entrepreneur at zero, and I think there are so many people that I know in my network that are 6 months in, a year into their business, and I'm just starting my second year. So I technically can be that entrepreneur at zero. Um, and when I
You're
think
at
of
point 0.5.
I'll take it at 45. When I think of the justice impacted builder, there again, people right here in my audience, I think of William Rochelle as an impact, just an impacted builder. I will, Bill, I hope it's okay that I said that. That again is just my opinion. And so I do see people out there that I feel like that. I think of I'm just scrolling through here because there are comments in here from people. There, I'm trying to think of who struck me as the person that was the midlife rebuilder. I know quite a few people, right? And that's it. They had 30 years in corporate. All of a sudden, they woke up. The money they were making wasn't enough to to make them happy. Whatever happiness is now looked different. So, guys, drop in the comments. Are you 1, 2, or 3 on this scale here? I'm curious to know. And do you have any questions about where there may be overlap or how you can move from one into the other? Um, so, you also spoke on page 37. That's how you know I'm reading the book, folks. About the steps of work that we need to do in order to work through this rebuilding process. And it's like I actually see it proactively as something that if we had the framework for to start with, that entrepreneur at zero would not end up in a situation to rebuild. Yet I see the greater amount of people in the situation to rebuild, right? So, you know, and there were 5 that you listed. You listed identity work, clarity work, skill building, structure building, and stability work. So, if you guys are following in the audience, I'm curious to know, where are you here? Do you feel that you have completed the identity work, the clarity work, the skill building, the structure building, and the stability work? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 again. And what is it that's holding you from moving into the next part? Because this is a great opportunity for you to ask Joe, pick his brain, and ask him these questions.
But in what you just shared there, Nick, is actually the 5 pillars of the program. And when you look at building a house or building anything, you have to have a solid foundation. And when you're building that foundation, then you set. If you're building something off the ground, you put the pillars down. Well,
Mhm.
pillar number 1 is building dignity and identity. Without that ability to rebuild your dignity, your agency, your identity, if you don't have that, none of the additional work is going to um, have the ability to last. The that center pillar kind of carries the weight of everything. And then you move out to the corners and you have, pillar number 2, which is truth and clarity. Because if you cannot um, honestly say and identify what the problems were, what the challenges are, what the things that led to the collapse, whether it's your fault, not your fault, partly your fault, doesn't matter what the necessarily driving factor is, but you've got to be able to come to complete clarity in where you are right now and
Mhm.
what that means. And then pillar 3 gives you the tools and the skills to kind of move forward. Pillar 4 is structure and strategy of how you continue to build, continue to grow, continue to develop. And then pillar 5 is where you get to stability. It's income and stability is what pillar 5 is, and that's where you move to sustainability and move forward. Whether that's your business, your job, your family, your marriage. While my background in most of how I couch things business related, this book can be applied to life, as well as business. Because the full title of the book is "Built for Rebuilding: When Life, Career, or Circumstances Fall Apart." So it's not strictly career based. So, but
Mhm.
it's because of who I am, what my kind of writing knowledge and background and things are. So
Mhm. Mhm. So I want to address this comment here from or question rather from Coach Carey. How do you move from one to the other? It kind of popped up as we were speaking about the different pillars here. But I think that actually went back to when we were talking about the type of rebuilder that you are, whether it's after destruction, midlife, entrepreneur, and just impacted. So I could kind of get like the midlife, like how do you, move from one back to that, you're midlife, you're midlife. Well, everybody's midlife is different to start with, to me at least, in terms of maturity and where you are on your path. Um, in not just your career, but where you are with your emotional intelligence. So somebody might hit that midlife at 20. Somebody might hit that midlife at 50. It's at that point to me when you just had enough of doing what you've done over and over and over, and now you feel a shift. And it's this is your midlife. I got to pick this up. I got to do something else. So that's what I mean. And when I think about the entrepreneur at zero, I definitely think that there are people who have started a business for one reason or the other. It didn't succeed. They start another business, but they started exactly the same way. They're back at zero again. That does not make any sense to me. Like, I understand if you start a business doing A and it doesn't work out, and then you start a business doing B in a completely different industry, you're technically not starting at zero, because you technically bring some experience forward with you as an entrepreneur. So I don't feel like you should be starting at zero again. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's just my thought process. And that's why I think a book like this is so important to read before just start rebuilding. But even somebody as me who's into year two, I could look back and identify off the bad things that I should totally not have done. And I know, like, if somebody approached me, I would tell them these are the things that I thought I shouldn't have done. And that might make them think about it. But that's why I want people to read the book, think of the 5 pillars. And now, when I visualize these 5 pillars, are they all up at the same time holding a structure? Or, because they can't be this height, and this height, because your house is going to be leaning. Or is it meant to be built this pillar, then this pillar, then this pillar, in that order, and then put the top? Because this is where I also feel like, with me, I was telling you, I do feel like I went through the identity work. I have figured out who I am, what it is I want. The imposter syndrome is gone. The clarity work, again, my why, it is strong, it is there. But when I think about the skill building, the structure building, and the stability work, it's all almost happening in tandem with each other. Like, talk to me about that. It's
Well,
like,
here's the thing: no one of us is at the same place at any time. Each of us is at a different step. You and I could have been working for company ABC for 25 years together.
mhm,
They go out of business, we crash, right? You have done more of the identity work. So you are very in tune with who you are, and you have your dignity, you have those things in place. Me, not so much. I've got to go back and really look inside and do the work. And if anybody that's ever been in therapy of any kind, for the most part, for it to be successful, you got to do the work. And so you're up here, I'm here. But now I have had a little side hustle going on for the last 10 years. You haven't. You've just, done your job, went home. So when it comes to tools, skills, a little bit more stability, I might be here and you're here.
mhm,
So nobody comes into this work, this book, this process in the same place. So
perfect. That's
you want
exactly
to
what I wanted.
you do want to use the sequence. You do want to follow it. You do want to make sure one is solid, then two, then three, then four, then five, and then you're able to put the cap on it, like you said. Because when you build a house, you might look at a building going up, and it goes up at all kinds of different shapes, but it all gets to the top at the same time. So, you know, all in all, you go through the process in order, sequence through it, but you may not spend a lot of time in number one, basically because once you read it and go through it, you're like, okay, this is me. I got this, and then you may get to two and go, you know what? I really haven't been honest with myself about this. And as you're reading it, that little, hair on the back of your neck kind of stands up a little bit, and you realize, yeah, I got some work to do here.
I wanted that to come out. I wanted that to come out because I need people to understand when you say built for rebuilding, how to rise when life, career, or circumstances falls apart. It doesn't mean that you have to have fallen apart and be at the bottom in order for this book to be helpful to you.
Yeah.
You can be at a certain point in the journey, which is where I feel that I am. And even though that I was able to get a bit of the start, I am curious very much now to dig into the backside of things and building the stability and the structure, right? So I feel like the structure is coming along, but the stability needs to be there. And then that stability makes me stop and think. And this is a really crucial question I want to ask you. I don't know how you will answer it, but I do hope the audience is paying attention. I want to say a number of the entrepreneurs that I know, whether they're doing it for a year or 5 years, they have not established any sort of stability,
Mhm.
right? And listen, that could change for various reasons. So it's not a matter of why aren't you, but rather at what point does it become crucial for you to say, listen, I need to really be realistic about what's happening here and my needs, because I think that this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs do not think about. They don't address. They just keep going and going for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. This next one, this is gonna hold, this is hold. And meanwhile, they're just like really down there losing it. So, as somebody who has established these incredible companies and has been able to come back time and time again, is there or was there ever a point in any of your businesses that you said, you know what? No, Joe, you got to cut your losses now and you just got to move on?
My third one that I sold wasn't necessarily cut my losses, but it was seeing kind of the writing on the wall and going, it may be time to move on. And, I was able to step away and, sell that business. It wasn't a huge amount of money, but it also wasn't bad. But it was timing, looking at how the market was changing in that industry, and I was able to make that move. But now, when I look at, I've worked with probably 150 different business owners over the last 30 years,
Hmm.
and some don't get that at all. What you just asked about, Nick, you work with them for a while, and they just wanted somebody to give them a magic bullet. They didn't want to do the work. And then others, when you've sat down and went through their revenue and their cash flow and said, okay, this is how you make money. This is where you're spending money. Where are you saving any money? And they, and so you go through it, and they kind of, you walk them through the process to an aha moment.
Hmm.
And, so for your question about the people that you're afraid don't have the stability, entrepreneurs aren't very well known for being stable when it comes to being cash conscious all the time, especially solopreneurs, people that don't have employees. It's just them.
But you
Um,
start and you build and you move on. Like, listen, guiding brilliant writers right now, I can't even say I'm a solopreneur anymore, even though it's only a year or two. I have a gold standard line editor on my team. I have a creative digital person on my team. These are not things maybe that are very apparent. Maybe, you don't see them front facing a lot, but you
but
have to
they're
build.
there, and the thing is when it comes to stability from a business standpoint versus a person standpoint, the business, you've got to have cash reserves. If you don't have cash reserves, you cannot weather storms. you
Mhm.
know if you go back to the business I lost, I don't know if I could have ever had the cash reserves to weather that storm. But for most of us, you hit, periods where you'll have a 30, 60, even a 90-day lull in business. Well, you still got to pay the digital person. You still got to pay you got to meet payroll. You got to meet, the expenses for your software. You got to meet, the expenses for home. So you need to have a reserve to be able to handle that. Because if you don't, then you end up in the issues of, cash advances and horrible, predatory loans to meet payroll, and so, you just put yourself in a situation where you won't be able to sustain long term. So
Thank you for sharing that. So that helps me to wrap this up and why it is I really want to encourage people to go buy this book. If you are alive, period. Okay, it's not about personal only or business only or some disaster befell you. Um, our lives are a roller coaster. That's it, period. Sometimes the roller coaster is moving fast, sometimes it's moving slower, sometimes it ain't moving at all. But that's every single one of our lives. And when you want to pick up something that is going to add to your knowledge from A to Z, not just A to B or X to Y, you need a book like this because this book encompasses everything and it will take you through everything that you need to know. If you need to skip all the way to the end because that's where you feel you are, fine, because I've read from the middle back to the front and the book makes perfect sense. You don't see that every single day. And I will leave you with this part. Stability is not optional. Stability is not a reward for rebuilding. It is the condition that makes rebuilding possible. I'm going to leave that there because that hit me really hard. Okay. And I'm not thinking about this just in terms of business. It has to be um, married. There was something in there in your book as well that struck me. Um, do not mistake, shoot, what was it? Do not mistake chaos for for
for momentum or for
yeah.
how it's
So
how did I word it? I just went,
I
but
don't
it's
know, but
basically people, will mistake chaos for it's momentum, but it's another word that I use. So
yeah, and so there are a couple of things in there that really struck me that people think that because they're all in a fluster and they're busy, that they're doing something. No, not really. So again, there's just I say this with all my heart. I know that I would recommend books all the time, but I have been reading this book. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. From somebody that's standing here at the cusp of a very broad horizon of what's happening with guiding brilliant writers right now and the rollout that you've seen, I want to encourage you to go buy this book. I'm going to throw up that little reel really quick, and then we're going to bring this all to a close. Joe, thank you. I don't know where that hour went. So much for me saying 45 minutes. Um, I know that this conversation was perhaps geared a little differently than to my audience and what type of authors we usually bring on, but I felt that it is important to show the diversity. Everybody out here is looking, you're on LinkedIn, period, you're looking to build visibility and network. Let's be real. You say it like it is, right? For whatever your end goal is. Um, and that includes reaching a diverse network. You cannot live nor grow if you stay in the same circles all the time. So thank you so much again for being here. And I will see you
thank you
backstage
very
in
much.
just a minute. You are so welcome. All right, I'm going to throw this up. Please grab your phones. Please have it ready to scan the QR code. Grab a copy of this book. Reach out to me. Share your thoughts because you know what? Something big is coming. Joe didn't have a chance to talk about it, but there's a lot more that is going to be going along with this book. So I would suggest you pick the book up now and you start reading it because, yeah, I will definitely be joining what's coming and I'll just leave it there. Alrighty, yo, let's go.